Hi, everybody. You are listening to the Jaunty Mantis, a podcast of creative questions for curious gamers. My name is Jesse. I'm one of the hosts, and with me, as always, is our other host. Say hello, Matty.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good. Just thinking about peoples and the peoples of beneath.
Oh, that's right. We are continuing the series of creations without number. Which block are we on? We're on the fantasy block, right? And this is episode 3. Now, last time we did cyberpunk, and part 3 of that was creating a cyberpunk adventure. And we didn't stick it in. The funny thing is we didn't put it in the system that Kevin Crawford made. We just generalized it. We made a thematic template to create an adventure with that you could really put into any rule system. And what are we going to do for this one, for our fantasy one? We just said we're going to make a fantasy race, right?
Yeah, and I think we needed to pick something we knew mechanics pretty well that people could talk about if we're going to do some mechanical teeth for it. So we're going to take the people we've been talking about and make them in 5e, like as a playable race. What would that be?
5e Dungeons and Dragons, the world's most popular role-playing game.
Or so they say.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. 5e is a game that a lot of people play. I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. I think that's one of the benefits of it. I think that's part of the genius behind it, is they managed to make a very efficient, simple, straightforward version of it. And so I'm excited to get to this because if you've listened to any of our past episodes, I barely pay attention to mechanics when it comes to 5e.
All right. Well, I thought we spent so much time focusing on our tattoo-headed from birth people, the children of the first created, and those insidious members of the society who were the originals and therefore bad. I thought it'd be fun to make, what does it mean to play those people mechanically on the page? So one of the things I think we need a name for these people. What are they called? Because we haven't come up with one yet.
Well, how does one typically name a species or a race or a group of people for a fantasy setting? You know, they're varied, right? You've got the sacred cows of fantasy of dwarf, elf, gnome, orc. And then you have stuff that is just completely out of left field. You've got like the Warforged, you have tieflings, Azamars, so you've got the newer generation stuff. But how does anyone decide how to name anything? Are they named according to the region that they come from? What would any individual group of people call themselves in our world?
Yeah, by their nation state, but that's our level of societal development. We're Americans.
Yeah, we tend to think of things as in an American-centric mindset. These people in this world are not Americans. They're not from the United States of America.
Yeah, I don't think they have like the whole like nation state with nationalism as part of their identity.
What they do have is a very deep and confusing history around who they are and what that means to be who they are. Because there's multiple versions of them, right? There's the originals, and then there's the replicated versions of them that were made to copy them.
And their god is the first of those created.
Correct. And there's a form of ancestral worship that goes back to the, warrior culture of the heroes that fought in this prophesized end of times conflict. So we could just make up a word and have that be for them, or we could be very purposeful in naming them. Like,
Yeah, well,
they,
when we were reading that fantasy section, I think Kevin Crawford said most of the time it's just like the morphemes of your own language and weird combos you wouldn't normally do. So you could pick a language palette um, of an existing language, and or we could just name them. We went Latin with the Pax Osseus.
We could do that again. We could use something in Latin. Well, that you could. I don't know any Latin.
Well, I don't know. I always get Greek and Latin confused because I don't actually know either of them. But as the laziest option, we make a pun on hema, meaning blood, because they have the like scab or blood colored tattoos on their heads, and call them hemans.
Not this time, my friend. Not this time. Although I like that. I like that. No, I think that the name of their people should be fractured like their identity. Like, it started as something and now it's ended up as something not completely different. But the name started out as one word and then has been changed a couple of times to reflect the situation. Like adding like an apostrophe
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was going to say, like, you could call them like the scribed or the marked for their tattoos.
Well, let me ask you this then. If let's pretend we made up like 10 different peoples.
Yeah.
Would they all have names like the Marked or the Bankers or, the Lost or, the Downtrodden or the Ascended, or the Gifted? Would they all have names like that? Is that like, I think we need to come up with whatever the common naming, paradigm is and then stick to it.
Yeah, but usually, I mean, like for the level of technology we're at, usually the common naming convention is a people's name for themselves is the people, and their neighbor's name for them is the barbarians. So,
yeah, interesting. This is a lot more difficult than I thought it would be because I want it to be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I have designed a lot of different worlds for people to play in. A lot of them have never been shown to anyone. And when I create the races in there, I usually slightly modify them off of stuff that already exists in fantasy. I use like similar naming. Like a good example of this is the difference between like a D&D elf and an Age of Sigmar elf.
Yes.
Right? Where it's like, look, we're all talking basically about the same kind of concept, but these are two totally different things. They just encompass enough of the same connective tissue because that helps us play a game, right? If you've been playing 5e D&D and now you're playing Age of Sigmar and you're like, what are these guys? And you're like, they're elves. And you're like elves? And you're like, yes, except a lot worse.
Yeah. That haughtiness. Now couple it with a keen desire for bloodshed to venerate their god.
Yeah. Well, you did bring up the crown tattoo.
Yeah, you brought up the broken two things in the apostrophe. So if I take what I think are my two best ideas, not Haman's, but the Hema, like the Hey Scree.
Hey Scree.
Hey, HEA apostrophe SCRI.
Okay.
Hoscree.
Okay. I can
Sounds
get behind
fantasy-ish,
that.
right?
It does. The Hoscree. I mean, I was gonna try to take the opposite angle just for sake of making.
Well, let's run that one out.
Run what out? What are you talking about?
You're the opposite angle, so we get all the ideas on the table.
Oh, I was trying to think of something like I was gonna try to take the tattoo on the head to be somewhat literal in the sense of a crown. And then I was thinking like a monarch or something sworn, and it's like a blood pattern or a blood symbol. And then there's a disconnect between the ones that are original and the ones that have been replicated. So I was going to call them like the blood sworn, or the something in that regard to the crown aspect of it, like gosh, it was on the tip of my tongue and now I lost it. But something in that regard, like they all their name is basically all like evocative of being kings or rulers, or inheritors of of this culture. So I don't know.
Inheritors. I like that.
Like the blood sworn inheritors.
I have an idea.
Okay.
This might do a little complication, but if we're going to stick with 5e, let's take those title things and make them as a background that's optional for a player character.
Okay.
Like Bloodsworn and Inheritor are two backgrounds common in this culture.
Right. Like, and they both represent the different, like, whether you believe you were made, you're a replicated one or an original.
Oh, I think it has to do with that religious schism we created. So this is okay. We're free to disagree. Like any player, if we ever wrote this down, or any DMs free to disagree. I think that a lot of the paranoia about who's an original and who's created it's just balderdash. Like it's just it's nonsense. Oh, yeah. It's just this cultural vein. There's really, if the originals did actually look exactly like them as their legend says, like there's been so many generations of interbreeding at this point that there's like no difference at all. Like it's just this like cultural paranoia that they have that comes from living in a benighted hellscape ruled over by the big bad of another dimension who thwarted a prophecy to create this like false afterlife.
Right. So then as a racial name being called like the true blood, or the true, that's too close to true soul, which shows I have Baldur's Gate 3 on the brain as per usual. But I like the idea of making it different backgrounds of the same race,
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that.
Because both sides think they're the children of the first created.
Mm-hmm.
But they say like, oh, those Bloodsworn, they're the originals. And they're like, no, the Inheritors, they're the originals.
I mean, you could just say their name is, what was the one remind me what you said earlier?
The Hey Scree?
Yeah. You could say the Hey Scree. In their language, it means the crown of cunning.
Okay.
Right? And the crown of cunning is a very specific like pattern on their heads. It's like the pattern, and all patterns are variations of this like idyllic pattern or formation on the head. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So the Haskree, which in their native tongue means the crown of cunning, which is the thing they all aspire to. It's the star for the star-bellied Sneeches.
Okay, cool. So, I think the next step, now that we've got a name for them, we know a lot about their culture from rolling it up in the previous session. In the current edition, since what was it, Monsters of the Multiverse or whatever, they're just moving away with a racial inherent ability modifier. Now I think it's everybody gets to pick something that's, +2, +1. I say we just have a suggested bonus. And I think going from our cultural traits, with as much as their culture values like charm and seduction, I think they should get a charisma bonus. Like they should get +2 to charisma, and because they're bigger than their neighbors and tough, they should get a +1 to con.
Fair enough. Yeah, that works. I was going to also say that you could make it's because it's different. It's been fractional. It's been fractured into many different ways. You could say, kind of piggybacking off of what you said, or yes anding what you just said, like it's more than just a suggestion. It's like this is the out of the box one, but because it's a fractured people, there are many different varieties.
Yeah. Yep.
And so you could essentially, if we really wanted to, I'm not saying we do tonight, but if you really wanted to, you could dig into each variety based on these other things. Or you could invite the person to be like, make up your own, to give them more buy-in. Here is the most popular, most recognized type of these people. If you want to make your own, here's how to do it. Use a different set of ability scores. But this is how the rest of the world perceives these people. Like the way that we all perceive each other in the world. You know what I mean? Like, I deal with a lot of people from all over the world in my job, and everybody has a viewpoint of everybody else from their respective countries. And I'm like, you guys couldn't be more wrong. Like, these generic interpretations we all have of people from, I don't know, France. Like, you'll find a varied group of different French people, but I'm sure there is a French identity and there's a stereotype, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the web of hate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So next let's talk about how they age.
Standard human style, or do we want to do something weird because this is a world underneath a giant skull?
Yeah.
They age in reverse.
I think they age the same as dwarves.
Okay, so they live about 300 to 400 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they mature at the same rate as dwarves, or do they mature slower?
I think they mature at the same rate of dwarves.
Okay.
Wait, how long is a dwarven childhood? I should know this, having made that grudge-based holiday, but
I think it's all really been hand waved in 5e to be like everybody matures at the same rate. Which that is the first thing I would change about a fantasy role-playing game.
yeah, I think these people are a little longer lived than humans. They age at this and mature at the same rate as dwarves do in standard 5th edition.
Okay.
And then size, they're medium.
Mm-hmm. What kind of cool shit are they gonna get?
So this is where I wanted to get crazy.
All right.
I think we should go with 1 resistance. Do you know the resistance tiers?
No.
Like the most common are like fire damage, cold damage, lightning damage. So if it's really, really common, it's, gonna be, it's worth a lot more to have a resistance to a common damage type. But then when you get into other damage types that are much less common, like psychic damage or necrotic or radiant, like resistant to radiant damage is usually useless. Necrotic can be a little bit more useful. I think these people are sort of like infused with death because of the world. And so I think they have resistance to necrotic damage.
I love that. And I could also make an argument for a resistance to psychic damage, or at least a bonus against mind controlling effects.
Okay.
Like, these are people whose identity has constantly been in question. And so for some reason in my head, that gives them some sort of mental fortitude. Like, I know who I am.
Okay.
Like I have a mental resilience of some kind. I'm not saying it has to be a resistance.
No, it's easy if we do a resistance to psychic damage.
Okay.
And then we can skip the necrotic thing. because I just want them to have one resistance, because I also think we should give them a cantrip just because I think it's cool if
Okay.
everybody can toll the dead.
And what is Toll the Dead? I know what it is, but say it out loud.
It's you make the ringing of a sonorous bell, and it does like 1d6 hit points, I think, unless the person's taken damage, and then it does like 1d12.
Gotcha. Okay. I dig.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, you can do this. That's a cantrip. So at will.
Okay. I mean, if you're playing Baldur's Gate 3, cantrips are awesome.
If you're
If you're
playing regular
playing,
D&D, cantrips are awesome.
oh, I wouldn't know. I struggle. I struggle keeping interested in 5e. I'm sorry. If it hadn't been for Baldur's Gate 3, I probably would have rejected this idea of making this race in 5e. Anyway, okay. So if I'm sure a lot of people, especially our listeners, would think, hey, I'd love to make my own race in 5e. I wonder if there's a guide for that. Because then the DMG, it's hilariously inept at helping you do that. And
Yeah.
when you look online, most websites are also hilariously inept or just like way grossly overpowered or underpowered. And most of
What?
them will tell you to look at the other races and use that as a guideline for how to come up with, racial traits.
Yeah, giving them a damaging cantrip might be a little bit on the power scale thing.
Oh, how so?
I don't know. They just can all like at will hurt people with making bells, dolorous bells ring.
I think when you try to design something and you try to figure out whether it's overpowered or not, and this is going to seem a little obvious here, people, so bear with me. First, you have to picture what is the style of the game. And Jesse will say, well, what do you get awarded experience for doing? 5e, you get awarded experience for killing shit, right? And one of the problems that D&D in general suffers from is when everything on your character sheet is a hammer, then everything in the world you're playing in looks like a nail. So it's like everything your character does is basically around killing and hurting and damaging people for the most part. So having a spell that can damage people is a very powerful racial feature, even if it's a cantrip. But it depends on how many qualifiers it has on it, right? So it is a cantrip. So it's not meant to be a powerful spell in the sense that it's not like a 5th level spell or a 1st level spell or a 3rd level spell in comparison. So that's qualifier number 1. Other qualifiers would be like, does it require a saving throw? And if it does it deal half damage? Right? And then are there any other effects from it? Like, does it knock someone prone or temporarily blind someone or whatever? And then the other thing you have to compare it against is like, if if you're playing a fighter and you play this race, is this cantrip useful to you, or would you rather just shoot a motherfucker with a crossbow?
Yeah, by 3rd level, you'd rather hit somebody with your sword multiple times.
Right. So you have to kind of think of it like that when you design races for D&D, is like, how useful is this going to be to how many different combinations you could do, right? So if there's a character class that doesn't get a lot of like damaging, useful cantrips as a spellcaster. So here's the thing. The majority of all classes in 5e are spellcasters. I'm not just talking about the character core classes. I'm talking about also the subclasses. That is a huge shift in D&D over the years, is it's just gone way more towards casters. So the idea of adding a cantrip makes it that much more useful because it has a wider group that it can apply to. So then you have to think of it like which casters would benefit from this specifically, right?
Yeah, it's just kind of after first level, it just kind of becomes flavor.
Okay, which is fine if you want to use it for flavor. That's totally fine. If you want it to be played, you need to make it useful. I kid. Come on. What is this fucking thing called again? I'm trying to look it up on D&D Beyond. Toll the
Toll the
Dead?
Dead. People still play dwarves and nobody gives a shit about stone cutting.
Yeah, that's true. Toll the Dead. Under spells. You point at one creature you can see within range, and the range is 60 feet. And the sound of a dolorous bell fills the air around it for a moment. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d8 necrotic damage. If the target is missing any of its hit points, it instead takes 1d12 necrotic damage. And then the spell's damage increases as you level up. Now, here's what's useful about this. Okay, wisdom save. That's the save that's used. So if you're fighting something like something really stupid or unwise, and then you just told me that necrotic resistance is not very popular.
Yeah, it's usually just something the undead have.
Okay. So it's necrotic damage. So a large portion of monsters that you fight or adversaries that you fight will not have resistance to this. So it is another tool in the toolbox for any caster, right? If your cantrip is firebolt and fire resistance is very common, this is going to potentially be useful to you.
Yep.
So I think it could be very useful. I think if you're in a group of people who are used to like planning out every stage of their character, I don't think this is going to matter. You know, I think if you have somebody who's like, I've got my whole build planned out, it's 4 levels of warlock, 2 levels of cleric, 6 levels of this. I don't think this spell is going to matter at all.
Cool.
But
then
for
I think
someone
it's
like
balanced.
me, okay, cool. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, so we've got the Hayskier or Hayskree, and they age the same rate as dwarves. We suggest a +2 charisma, +1 con, but you're free to use the current rules of the game. Their movement speed is 30 feet. They don't have any weird vision. They see like normal people. They have resistance to psychic damage and can use Toll the Dead. Let's say based off charisma.
Sure. Yeah.
Like force a personality thing. That's what their society is important.
Yeah. I don't think we're done yet though.
We're not?
No, if you look at like Astral Elf, they got a ton of shit they can do.
Well, we gave him a damage resistance and a cantrip. If you look at the Eladrin and the DMG.
This thing, the Astral Elf has Astral Fire, Dark Vision, Fey Ancestry, Keen Senses, Starlight Step, and Astral Trance.
Shit, I gotta play one of those.
And this is a sub race of an existing, you know, of elf being the prime race. So I think you need to do more, buddy.
Okay. Oh yeah, languages. Common. I don't know that we need to. Okay, let me look up Astral Elf. I was going to jump onto making the backgrounds.
You could make a proficiency. You give them a proficiency in a skill.
They get the normal ability increases, common in one other language.
If their
lifespan.
if charisma is important, why not give them proficiency or expertise in a charisma based skill? Why not give them expertise in a charisma based skill?
Okay.
Like, why not use this race to create like a face character, an uber face character without having to play the bard? Like, maybe that's a feature that this race enables the player character.
So like innate charm, you have proficiency in persuasion.
Proficiency or expertise.
What's expertise?
Expertise is an extra amount of bonus. God, weird. This is hilarious. I mean, I like this and I don't like this, but all right, expertise in D&D 5e. Let's see here. Expertise is a way of doubling the proficiency bonus. So if you like, for instance, in Baldur's Gate 3, when you don't hit your head, come on. In Baldur's Gate 3, when you play a bard, you have the opportunity to apply proficiency and expertise. Expertise comes later. You know, for a rogue, when you start out, you can give them proficiency and expertise in something. And I think if you were to give this race expertise, you could potentially allow for different multi-classing avenues, maybe.
I'm again it.
Okay. Expertise allows you to double your proficiency bonus to a skill. So if you wanted to sneak with expertise, you make stealth dexterity checks. Say you have a 16 in dex and are level 2, so your bonus is +2. The roll would be 1d20 plus dex +3 plus proficiency times 2 for a total of +7. So think of it as proficiency times 2.
It's too much, man.
Okay, something else then.
I mean, I just think the expertise, that's like a class feature. I don't think you pick up a class feature for
What, proficiency or expertise?
expertise.
Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, you might be right. I don't know. Let's see here. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Astral elves have sacred flame if they pick that as their cantrip. So just the innate ability to call down the light of the heavens, advantage on saving throws to avoid or in the charmed condition, proficiency in perception, and the ability to teleport 30 feet a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus.
Yeah.
And then the normal, you don't need sleep because you're an elf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yep. That is crazy. That is a crazy lot of abilities for an astral elf.
I mean, rock gnomes have dark vision, gnome cunning, which is an advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws against magic. Artificer's lore, which whenever you make an intelligence history check related to magic items, alchemical objects, or technological devices, you can add twice your proficiency bonus instead of any proficiency bonus you normally apply.
Fine. Expertise and persuasion.
Just don't call it expertise. Call it twice your proficiency bonus.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Man, I'm behind the times. I'm looking like Aaron I elf here. You know one cantrip of your choice from the wizard spell list.
Yeah. That's the default, man. Just give them a cantrip. You know what would be cool is to just mess with the rules. Like this is how I would prefer to design abilities in 5e. Is I would say you can use summon familiar, but the familiar only comes out for a certain amount of time and it resets with a short rest. That way you can have like a familiar no matter what. That's the kind of bullshit I would do. I have no idea if that works or if that's within the rules, but that's the way my brain works. Is like, how can I just break something that's already in the game? Whereas like you are the kind of like designer that wants to make things fit properly and be like and have like a good flow to them where everything just makes sense. Would that be accurate?
Well, I mean, I'm about to run a Rifts game, but
Yeah, but
yes.
riffs in the system is designed for it to be batshit ridiculous and broken.
Yeah,
So
it gives you permission to be broken.
Yes. And D&D 5e is not giving you permission to break it.
I mean, the book explicitly gives you permission to break it, but I don't feel that I can actually have that permission.
The people who play it don't. The people who play Rifts know that game is broken.
Yeah.
Like I watched a YouTube video with people who play Rifts where they're like, the best advice for a GM who wants to run a Rifts game is to don't get lost in the rules. Just like make a decision and then look it up later. And if you were wrong, own it. And if you were right, you're right. Keep moving. Don't stop the fun. And that shows a self-awareness about what that game is to be able to be like, this is just broken bullshit. Just fucking make it work and keep the game moving.
So here is my argument against just breaking it in 5e.
Nobody will play it.
You need it. This is the thing I've learned in my job, and I'm gonna cringe at saying this. You need it to match the brand standard.
That's true.
Of the game. You need it to match the language and the style. So you can just break it, but you need to tinker with the language when you break it so it sounds like something that people are used to reading this particular style of diction in this particular language. And if you just break it and do it in a way that's like sloppy, it's gonna just make things complicated and people aren't going to use it.
Fair enough.
And I'm looking at Dark Elf and I'm just like, Astral Elf's better.
You could.
Oh, man. Since they do say these, like, so here's an example, like for the Drow and the Astral Elf, whose magic power goes up as they gain levels. When you reach 3rd level, you can cast Fairy Fire spell once with this trait and regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. So that's the brand standard. Right. So here's what I'm thinking. Let me see what level spell this is. Because I want to add something then to our cantrip of Toll the Dead that fits with what we talked about. And this is where I feel like this gets fun for me, because I'm just like, so what can we take from the mechanics that exist and match it to the crazy stuff we thought up when we were talking about this in the last episode?
Okay.
And I spelled it wrong. Okay, this is a 2nd level spell. Okay, cool. At 3rd level, you gain the ability to cast the spell Spiritual Weapon. You can do this because they can summon the swords, right? Or shields, can be a spiritual shield. You can, this ability refreshes once per long rest.
What about also I love it. What about also giving them armor proficiency, no matter the class?
I feel like it should be a shield proficiency, but I don't think shields require or proficiency with shields.
I don't know.
Hold on.
What you could also do is give them a feat. for free.
I think everybody gets a feat for free.
No, but
now.
I mean like a very specific feat for free.
Okay.
That's another thing you can do. That to stay within the brand thing you said that one time.
Yeah, you just got to have the language match. Like,
no, that it makes perfect sense. I wasn't going to fight you on that.
So if you wanted to do the familiar thing, you gain the ability to call a familiar. You could have at first level the familiar remains for 2 hours. I don't know. I mean, you need to detail it. Or you just get a familiar as being part of that race.
Yeah.
Why time limit it? It's not like having a raven like that hangs out with you is like super unbalancing anything. Yeah, proficiency with shields. You gain proficiency with shields.
Okay, what does proficiency with shields do?
You can just use a shield.
Now, isn't there a rule that you need a specific spell focus item for if you're a caster? And could we make it that the shield can count as your spell focus item? Isn't that a requirement for some classes? Is that you need a specific item as a spell focus item in order to cast a spell?
The way it works is your spell focus can substitute for spell components that don't have a actual gold value. Man, this is a gap. What the hell does armor proficiency do? What happens if you wear armor without proficiency?
You can't cast your spells. Let's see here. Shield Master is a feat. You use shields not just for protection, but also for offense. You gain the following benefits when you are wielding a shield. If you take the attack action on your turn, you can use a bonus action to try to shove a creature within 5 feet of you with your shield. If you aren't incapacitated, you can add your shield's AC bonus to any dexterity saving throw you make against a spell or other harmful effect. If you are subject to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, you can use your reaction to take no damage. If you succeed on the saving throw, interposing your shield between yourself and the source of the effect.
Is there a prerequisite for that?
No, this feat is just called Shield Master, and it's from the player's handbook. So I would say just give him Shield Master the feat. It's on page 170 of the player's handbook.
Okay. Give him the Shield Master feat. That's better than just the proficiency with shields.
Yeah, because then you can actually do shit with it.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a cantrip, we have psychic resistance, and we have Shield Master. I'm thinking one other maybe minor kind of thing. Like,
if you wear armor that you lack proficiency with, you have disadvantage on any ability checks, saving throws, or attack rolls that involve strength or dexterity, and you can't cast spells.
The shield will take care of this. We're fine.
Yep.
We don't need to put them in. We don't need to make them ridiculous.
So let's give them the cantrip, and at third level, they can do spiritual weapon once per long rest.
Perfect. Cantrip, spiritual weapon, and that Shield Master feat.
Yep.
Plus psychic resistance, and you're probably overpowered. Perfect 5e race. We did it, guys. Oof.
It only took us like, yeah.
I didn't think we'd pull it off. We probably should have put this race in a game that we like. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, Hayscree and Riffs. You're going to roll 3d6.
Yeah.
Your OCC skills are
right. You get 4 more attacks if you're.
This species has a point by cost of B in Shadowrun. And if you're playing old school essentials, just use Dwergar from the advanced book.
There you go. All right. Well, we did it. Is there anything else that we wanted to add for this entry? Let's say this was an entry on D&D Beyond that we just wrote up.
We probably want a cool name for why they get shield mastery. Bearers of the ancestral shields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig it. I think we nailed it.
Bellringer sword caller is the cantrip thing.
Yeah. Bellringer sword caller. Almost makes me think we can do more with that. But we'll just leave it there. We have backgrounds to do, right?
I think we got enough.
Okay.
I mean, background is basically like, if you picked a background, what's like a background ability that we would give them? They'd probably get like 2 tool proficiencies, couple extra languages, 2 skill proficiencies. I think they're familiar. I think they gain proficiency in religion for like the inheritor gain proficiency in religion and proficiency in insight.
Okay.
And they can get like the Alkalites pack or something. Like they're the more priestly ones.
Well, you got me convinced.
And then Bloodsworn, you take some version of the folk heroes, the peasantry will put you up anywhere sort of thing. Give them proficiency with intimidation and nature. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does anybody use backgrounds? Because they're actually pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I have. And my DM was really surprised. It was when I was playing with that local group down here for a while. And I was like, I'm a folk hero. I'm like, okay, you're going to stop for the night. Is there a farm nearby? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll rock up. It's like, what do you do? I knock on the door. The farmer answers the door. He's like, I have the folk hero background. I'm like, I'm sorry to trouble you, brave sir, but I need a place to stay for the night. Just like, what? I'm like, look, yeah, it's just going to let me stay here. Like, and feed me. Like, it's in my character background. I'm fucking Robin Hood. What do you want?
I'm fucking Robin Hood. I love it. That
reminds me of the next Takara game. I got to do that to Master John and just be like, oh yeah, no, there's a soldier here I served with. No, it's in my background, soldier. Like, there's a guy here, and because of my rank, yeah.
That's true. So true. Well, this was a lot of fun, even if it had to be 5e.
It would have been super easy if we had actually done it in Sine Nomine, but it's like,
yeah. Look, as much as I love Kevin Crawford's work, more people recognize 5e. That was the obvious decision. It's like, don't overthink it. Like, more people will be able to relate to the frustration of the process of creating a race for D&D, because there's so many websites out there that say, here's how to do it. And then they give you like really nothing to work with. So,
who doesn't give you nothing to work with?
I don't know. Who doesn't give you nothing to work with?
But for creating monsters, I'm just gonna say the Angry DM.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He has this mini essay about creating monsters in 5e. It's how I understood
the
actual tables in the DMG. That's how I know the thing about like, well, the most common types of damage you encounter are fire, cold, blah, 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 and magic. Like if you gave somebody magic resistance, so anything that was magic, that would be insanely good. I think I mentioned it on a previous episode. I used it to make like a werebat dude that could vomit homunculi of himself made of blood that like had a shared hit point pool, and so it would flap around and attack at the same time while he fired crossbow bolts from a treetop.
Wow.
Yeah. It was
That's
a good
awesome.
article, man.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. That's an oldie though.
Yeah. Lupo,
From a
the
while
hand
back.
of whatever my big bad guy's name was. Can I just say,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I dislike BBEG.
BBEG? What the hell is that?
The big bad evil guy.
Is that a term?
That is a term that is very popular in the social medias for Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. Why do you have such an aversion?
I think it actually comes from Buffy or something. But
I've never seen Buffy.
Oh.
Why do you have such an aversion to it?
I don't know. I don't like it. It's the same reason I don't really like talking about things in terms of the MacGuffin. Right? It's impersonal. It's reductive of your campaign's villain. And I think if you're going to trouble to make a overarching campaign villain, you shouldn't be reductive of him, because it's going to show up at the table that you just think like, oh yeah, here's the big bad evil guy. Oh yeah, this is just it's the MacGuffin. Yeah, like whatever. That's just me. People are free to talk and play however they want.
I mean, I like it because the majority of the games I run are for people that just want to show up and drink beer and roll dice.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to put a lot of thought into they're not going to put anywhere close to as much thought as I did into my big bad evil guy. To them, it is a big bad evil guy. That's all they care about. There's the big bad evil guy. I hit it with my sword. You know? So if we had to invent a new acronym, what would it be, Jesse? What would you call it? We're going to make history right now in the Jaunty Mantis.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be part of our gaming show lore. Is Jesse's replacement for big bad evil guy. It's going to go down in the annals of show history. Written on stone. Here it is.
Final unknown cutting knave.
Wow. Huh. Final unknown cutting knave. Huh. I think there's a hidden meaning here.
Or the fuck. It's the fuck of the campaign.
All right, people. Well, we had some fun today. Hey, everybody. Matty here. We had some fun today. It's like that
Van Halen album, Fully Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
Yeah, that was very clever.
Thank you. I mean, it did that on the spot.
So no. I'm impressed.
Cunning knave is actually better than cutting.
Well, listener, we had some fun today, didn't we?
We did. We did.
And if you have any ideas, what?
I'm not the listener. I just answered.
Oh my God.
But that.
Jesse, take us out.
If you would like to contact us, and keep it brief, you can reach us at the Jaunty Mantis on Hex. You can reach us at the Jaunty Mantis on Threads. You can reach me at JingoistFet on X, JingoistFet. And then we also have an email now, jauntymantis@gmail.com. We'd love to have your questions so we can do a future listener question grab bag episode. Thanks for listening. Get out there and play some fucking games or something.
Yeah, get out there and write a useful website on how to create a 5e D&D race, and then send me the link for it.
Don't make it a 0.5, please.